Today's episode of the Baseline Scoop is brought to you by La Touraine Watches. Shop affordable luxury watches with La Touraine and enjoy fast and free shipping every day. Use promo code BLS10 for 10% off the Subnautica back in stock, and you will also get a free Tropic Band included at no extra charge. On today's show, Justin and I sit down with Bleacher Report's Jake Fischer to talk to him not only about his book, Built to Lose, but also about what it's like to be one of the top newsbreakers in the NBA. We talk with Jake also about some Sixers news, and then Justin and I focus on James Harden's new contract with the Sixers. Did he do Philadelphia a favor, and what's going on with his new wine label?
It's 89-84, Sixers, and they're getting signed. Unbelievable. Julius Erving put it hanging underneath. He was fouled. Over the baseline right side. Julius in the air, palming over the right hand. Floating, reaching, and spinning it in. Watch this fantastic move by the Dodgers.
All right, welcome to the Baseline Scoop. I am your host, Zach Chavalella, with, as always, my partner in crime, the man who will work for Sneaks, Mr. Justin Crosby. And we have a special guest today. That would be one Jake Fischer of Bleacher Report, Stardom, and, of course, the author of Built to Lose. Jake, how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing well, guys. It's things have slowed down. We got some time to come on and hang out with some friends. You know, what could be going poorly?
Yeah, absolutely. Watching you work and all the news drops one after another. Free agency is just a crazy time. The draft's a crazy time. Especially this offseason has been particularly insane with things like the Kevin Durant trade and everything such as that. So definitely nice to kind of have that exhale moment. And like you said, just be able to have some time. So we're grateful you could come on and talk some basketball again. Talk a bit about the book, which is again absolutely insane. And
thank you, man.
Great book.
Absolutely. And we do have the giveaway for the book. We're going to announce at the end of the pod the winners of the giveaway. So that'll be really exciting. But to really kind of just dive right on into it, right? So. The book, and actually, I guess I should even start with just saying, if you haven't bought this book yet, everybody, absolutely go out and buy this book. Go
Seriously,
anywhere that you can go, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's just about everywhere. Go out and get it. Okay. Jake talks about everything from Jake's My Dinner with Andre dinner with Sam Hinkie right in the intro, everything around the 2014 draft, or as I call it, the tankening, Doc Rivers' departure from Boston. Might be pretty interesting for a lot of Sixers fans now as well.
Sure.
Definitely just so much meat in there. It's fantastic. So
Go
out, look at the book.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Jake, my first question on the book really is how long did it take? Because there's so much info. Like, how long did it take to kind of like get everything together for the book?
Yeah, it took me like 3 years. I was at SI for couple of seasons. I interned there in the summer of 2015 and came on as an employee after college for the 16-17 season. That whole 18-19 year, and honestly the 19-20 season until the pandemic shut things down. I was in locker rooms talking to players and coaches and making phone calls. And then it took me the first 6 months basically of quarantine to work on the transcript. So it was basically a 3-year project that, became a thing. And it means a lot that people such as yourselves have gotten things from it and have enjoyed it and are recommending it to other people. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And the kind of follow up on that. So it took you a while to get the information together. And as you were putting this together, did you have any thought of like any potential fallouts from putting this information out? Because stuff in the book, I mean, it's great material, but it's more so not the everyday NBA fan would know. So were you kind of worried or anything about that?
Not really, because I think everything in there that I learned, I learned on the record from people who gave me clearance to share it. I'm sure there were things I didn't talk to Sam Hinkie for the book. I made that clear in there.
Right.
And Sam is someone that I'm happy to share. I have a relationship with. I did back during the time period. I mean, obviously, I wrote about it in the book. So, yeah, he was someone that I was curious what his reaction would be, and there were certain things that maybe I thought twice about putting in that I didn't necessarily, want him to not like. But at the end of the day, like, you can't really pull punches. I think a big thing that I don't know. I feel like a lot of reporters or younger reporters, sometimes get scared of the idea of a person not liking them anymore or not wanting to talk to them because, he said something that was a little critical or, whatever. Honestly, I found like people respect the honesty and the integrity to the truth, and people like to be criticized sometimes because they're also, most people get fired in this business, and usually they get. I mean, that's not to say cockily. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been fired. So, I think I got laid off. I didn't get fired. Let's be clear. But I think when everyone loses a job or a chapter ends or a new chapter begins, you start to look at it through a different lens and are welcome to feedback and stuff like that. And a lot of this stuff happened in the past too. So I think it was an interesting experience to get a lot of those details from people pretty unfiltered and honest because, the ramifications have already been felt. So there wasn't anything I wish, but there wasn't anything in there that it came out. It was so explosive and, led SportsCenter for a week. But there is a lot of stuff in there that I think a lot of people will look at and be like, holy shit, that was real, huh? So that's at least, I guess, a sales pitch I can make.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you kind of talk to the concept of almost asking for forgiveness, not permission, in a sense. And not that you don't want certain permission for certain things, obviously, but just being bold in what you do. Absolutely. And, really, since this book, before this book, even, you've started this meteoric rise, I'll call it what it is, into, and whether or not you want to admit it, your name is thought of, among the Adrian Wojnarowskis, Shams Charania, as far as news breaking and quality of work. So, and it happened fast too, not to say there wasn't a ton of hard work about it. That's kind of what I want to ask about. Like, what really went into it that kind of helped this, this rise for yourself and made you the reporter that you are today?
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's been a good 2 years. I'll say that. And I've had a lot of help from people around the league, from a lot of people at Bleacher Report, and to get support to work on this type of stuff has been a gift, honestly. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I'll say, I was at Sports Illustrated for 4.5 years. I started interning out at Slam and working for them before I interned at SI. And like the thing I always did all along, everywhere I went, was I just tried to report and find interesting stories that weren't being written about. And that's always the advice I give to people anytime someone reaches out, which, my email's in my Twitter bio. So if you want to give me a shout, like I do respond. I will say that. Not to, I'm not a big deal, you know what I mean? So like if people want to ask me a question, like, so I always tell people, like, sure, the industry is always changing, but it doesn't matter if it's journalism, media, whatever. If you're providing content that is consumed by people like things that are new and they can't find anywhere else. That's, the shiny object theory is very real. So I don't know. Whenever when I was coming up, I really wanted to be a feature writer, and I made a lot of connections to people. And this is just the first example that came off the top of my head. Like, I did a story with Chandler Parsons one year when he was with the Houston Rockets, all about his pump fake, because he had a ridiculous pump fake, and I wanted to know about it and talk to him about it. And Chandler Parsons appreciated talking about his pump fake because obviously that's a thing of his, right? So someone took the time to act, I started to get to know a lot of people around the league for, not, sorry, my phone's going off.
No,
for not, I just got to meet a lot of people around the league doing not standard things and getting to know them on a legitimate level. And, I worked on the book for a while, and that got me in the room with a lot of people as well. And just started to, and I was around long enough where, I just started to talk about this stuff behind the scenes with people as it was, and it helped. The transactional knowledge helped inform a lot of the feature writing I was doing. Then when I got let go, and I worked on the book full time for a bit, and then Bleacher Report, excuse me, scooped me up and wanted to put me in like a rumors, position. I said to them, like, I don't want to report on rumors. I want to report on things that are actually happening.
Yeah.
So, I called a lot of the people that I already was texting behind the scenes and sometimes calling them about, and said, hey, like, can I call you every week and talk about this shit? And, all of them said yes. And that 15, all those people, they've come and gone. Some weeks it's, that number is 30, other weeks it's 5, to really feel like I've got a pulse on what's happening. And then, then to write the story, if I find out Atlanta and San Antonio are talking about DeJounte Murray, and then I call as many people who are directly involved in those talks to figure out what's actually real and what's not, what is a rumor and what is real. Yeah. So John Collins not being part of the deal, like,
yeah,
I don't think that was a rumor. I think he was being discussed at one point in time, right? But then it became, once I was able to get back from people with knowledge like that, it was actually Danilo Gallinari. Like, that's how kind of my process works. So I don't even know what your question was, to be honest. I've been rambling for so long.
No, you really you answered it, I think, perfectly, because you kind of, in a way, you summarized just the way that your mind works and your general approach, which is, I think for anyone who has an interest in not only the NBA but NBA reporting and how any of that works is, I appreciated hearing it, So I definitely hear what you have, what you're saying there, and I don't know, it's just it's awesome to hear it broken down, because we look at so often, and you said you're no big deal, and I would phrase it as you're approachable, but you look at certain people in this industry who they've accomplished, so many of these great things, and they're these big time newsbreakers, and you always just wonder, how does this happen? How does that happen? How do they even get there? So, to get that insight, I thought it was awesome. So thank you.
You got it.
Yeah, and that kind of actually led into what I kind of wanted to talk about next, as far as, you're saying you're calling your different, sources, or, the people that you have relationships with. And I guess once you hear about something, you try to, get directly involved, whether it may be agents or players or whatever. But just outside of that, how else do you determine like what you put out in your like Monday roundup, or what you keep confidential? Because maybe, other people may not necessarily know about it, or may not be, hot and ready to come out yet.
Yeah. Well, there definitely are times where like I'm trying to sit on something because like I got obligations. Like I got, like right now, like I have to write once a week at Bleacher Report. That's been my deal. I mean, I'm probably saying too much, but we're just hanging out here. We're just a couple guys talking. So like I've got a story I got to write next week, for example, and I could have written it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're recording this Friday, but like I'm certainly hoping that, it's a topic that I'm pretty sure is not going to come to a conclusion anytime soon, but people need more info on it. So like, I got the info. Am I like holding it from the public? No, because I want to share it next week. But like, I'm definitely, I haven't written about it yet because I think, it's not the topic people are talking about, right? Like, I gotta be aware of what, at least this is how I approach things. Like, I gotta be aware of what people are already talking about, because if there's a way to add something new to an existing storyline that no one's heard of yet, that's going to be sometimes more valuable than bringing up something entirely different, right? So, like in this instance, KD, Donovan, obviously those are the two big storylines. Like, I've got a story on a veteran minimum guy. Like, no one's really going to care about that right now. Like, so I'm holding that and some other things. But I think the process typically is like, every Monday when I wake up and start making calls. Like, I'm trying to find out what is the number one biggest story in the league, no matter what. And if I can then get in touch with enough people to find enough for a story, and then to be able to bring it out, in a way that is impactful to the league, and to the readers. So the timing does matter a lot on those certain things. There's certain things I'll call someone and the source will say, and I hate saying the word source. Like, I do view these people as people, but
right.
But sometimes you'll call them and they'll say, look, if you can wait until tomorrow, I have a phone call, or I can give you more information then. But if you say something now, it might hurt me. Like, that to me is the type of quid pro quo that I think is above board. The stuff that's like, write this because it'll help me this way, or, put this out because it'll advance this conversation, like that. I don't touch that, and people in the NBA know that I don't do that. But yeah, I think there's ways to work with people around the league, people in positions of power, in order to benefit also. Because I don't want to get in the way of anyone doing their job. Just like my job is very much dependent on people helping me out, right? Like, no one has to talk to me, but I do provide some value in that I know stuff going on in every corner of the league, so we can have a conversation. You can pick my brain just like I'm picking yours, because there is a ton of stuff that could never be verified, right? Like, there's just certain things that, people working for a team, let's say, that's very unethical. For example, like, I got to get to prove that employment or write that story, but I can whisper about it to someone. That's, very responsible to do. I'm not saying anything publicly, but I'll share a little rumor to see what you might know, or what we can do for that type of stuff.
No, that definitely makes sense. And then actually, it kind of, so have there ever been moments where you've held the story back, or someone said, hey, wait another day or whatever, and then you feel like you might have had the scoop first, and then some other newsbreaker comes and breaks it before you? Is that like frustrating, or is that just a part of the business? Or
yeah, I mean, it's definitely part of the business, and I think there's a calculation a lot of times of like, oh, like, how long do I have? Like if I have this, what's our runway until we're probably going to get beat? There's also a matter of, like, there are certain people that I know I can't. Maybe this is definitely saying too much. I know there are certain people that I can't go to them and ask for confirmation, because they might tell a certain other reporter. So that's part of the game too. That is something that you do have to think about. But to me, the job is the second you believe that you got something, you bring it to the most involved person you can, the most highest ranking person who would know you can. And then when you feel like you have it, I mean, it's my obligation to the people who cut my checks to bring it out, because it's the obligation to the people who read it to let them know. So.
Absolutely. So when we think about a lot of other newsbreakers, there are, whether it's right or wrong perceptions of, well, this person typically talks to front office execs. This other person typically talks to player agents or the players themselves, things of that nature. Kind of sounds like you kind of talk to everybody. Is that about, right to sum up, anybody who would be like a legitimate, a person who would actually have knowledge of it, obviously, but you don't necessarily aim for one demographic. You just look for legitimate information. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think, the people I talk to are generally people that I like. There aren't too many people that I'm calling for comment on a story that isn't someone that I could call the next day just to say hi to. But a lot of those people could be a person's personal masseuse. They could be their off-season trainer. They could be a father. They could be a sibling. They could be the agent. They could be the college coach. They could be their high school coach. They could be their partner. They could be a friend. They could be a business partner. They could be their financial manager. There's a lot of people that I've come across just from I'm doing an interview with Zach LaVine, let's say at All-Star Weekend, and he had like 5 people in that room. Like,
Yeah.
those were all people who were traveling around with Zach LaVine over All-Star Weekend. Like, in theory, I could have stayed in touch with somebody there. There's the next time Zach LaVine's in the news cycle or something's happening, I could call that person. That was just a complete thing I pulled off the top of my head. I'm just using an example.
Yeah,
but
please don't aggregate this. Absolutely, yeah.
there's all angles of things, because there's a lot of value in talking to people who aren't necessarily a stakeholder. So any of those people I just mentioned aren't a GM or the player or the agent, right? So there's value in talking to a lot of those people and hearing what they have heard from people, and then kind of filling up your tool chest with a bunch of things to then bring to the conversation with someone who really, is in the room and say, well, I know this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
What do we got? That's kind of, I don't know. That's definitely a big part of my approach.
Yeah, wow. I can't even imagine how long your contact list is after after that. But Jake, we wanted to talk to you about a couple Sixers things before we let you go, just real quick.
Let's do it.
So obviously, one story that's been big in Philadelphia is the proposal for the new stadium, right, in the Fashion District. So, we've talked before. Obviously, you're from the area. You're really more just I would call you an NBA person. So just from a general, like, even forgetting Philadelphia, speak more like conceptually, like
Okay.
What to you is the thought of like leaving the complex and going to a more like center city type environment? Is that something that you think is good for the league? Good for the fans, the players? You have any thoughts on that by chance?
I don't think the league really gives a shit where the Sixers stadium is, to be honest. I mean, there's who's to say if the stadium moving more towards like Chinatown would revitalize, that area. Like, there's no way to predict that, right? Would it even, be a problem? Would it end up driving up real estate value and gentrifying the area and pushing out people who have lived there for 30 years? Maybe. Like, who's to say? It could be very bad. It could be very good. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if people in the city know that idea yet, right? The thought is always like, oh, a stadium sports will drive, great economic impact on the local, environment and community. And, there's also all these stories about how like the Olympics, which is, very different from an NBA team, but how like hosting Olympics is typically very bad for the local economy, even though it's brought in on these plans of all this growth that will come from it. Right. From like a general culture, like the complex being what it is, all those stadiums are there. You got Xfinity Live now. Like, I think that probably would lose some value from like a memory, cultural standpoint if it wasn't in the same thing. But the sports and the NBA is business, man. And like Sixers don't own that arena, and they want, and the ownership group wants to own their arena. They're looking at the Warriors, develop this whole complex down on the water in San Francisco, and they've got hotels and shops and restaurant. Like, Sixers don't want to be tenants of a 30-year-old building right now. Maybe it's even close to 40 years old now. So I know it's a little older than me. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
No, we know at least one party that would benefit from the stadium. But you're right. There are a lot of questions about like how would it actually impact we know what people say as far as it would revitalize this, impact this positively. But you're right. There's a lot of risk there at the same time. But you just don't know until it actually happens. But I definitely think you're right on the idea of losing some value in the complex area. And I know that, myself growing up in the area, going to every game in that spot, it just became tradition at a certain point. So that's just my opinion for whatever it's worth is, there's the value to be lost, right there for, you mentioned Xfinity Live. People talk about the convenience, but it's one of those things. It's so far away, the proposal. It may not even go through. We'll see. It's one of those things. Time will tell, and then time will eventually forget.
2031, right?
31.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I know Joel was had a reaction to that as well, but so it basically, who knows how it's going to end, and then at a certain point, people will forget that. Some people will forget. Obviously, if it causes an issue in the neighborhood, that's different. But we'll forget what we're arguing soon enough. But Justin, you have one more on the Sixers?
Yeah. So as far as just going through your reading and stuff like that, or your writing and reading, and I know one of your recent roundups we're talking about some of the younger players in the league. Where some contract extensions may be eligible for those guys, and who may get them or who may not get them. But you recently talked about Matisse Thybulle, which some fans love or hate Matisse. It's one way or the other. But I know you mentioned about some of his contract talks, and then I know there's been rumors around, reading some other things coming around the league as far as him being quote unquote shopped around the league or see what his value is. Do you possibly see Matisse, working out an extension with the Sixers, or do you think it could be more of a situation where he may be moved before next offseason? Just kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm always very careful on using the word shopped.
Yeah,
the Sixers shopped Matisse Thybulle. They did, and I think he knows it.
Yeah.
And it's not because the Sixers don't like Matisse. I think they do really like Matisse. I think the reason why he's still on the team is because they really like Matisse. But they know this is a very limited window. I mean, James Harden's not getting younger. Joel Embiid getting older, hurt more and more every year. Not to say he's less and less, but I feel like every year he's picking up different now he's got hand injury and he had so many head things, and before it was like lower body stuff. Like he just continues to get that Allen Iverson commercial from years ago where he's listening to the music and there's all the lines coming off his body. That's like where Joel Embiid's getting to. And it's not just like that's just bad for any type of franchise guy, right? So they see their window, they see it's brief, and they think that it will continue, with Tyrese Maxey. So having someone like Matisse on that timeline is very valuable, but if they could have found a way to use the 23rd pick or another pick and Matisse to go upgrade and get someone, I'm not saying Harrison Barnes. Like, I'm not saying that was it, but someone like that, someone who's definitely a legitimate veteran contributing piece. I do think that Harrison Barnes was a player that the Sixers offered 23 for sure. But I'm not saying Matisse I'm saying it's the type of player that I think him or better. Like, they were clearly trying to find upgrades to the rotation. They weren't just trying to get rid of Matisse because they hate him, but his limitations with this unit are what they are. Maybe on a team that didn't have Joel Embiid on it and played more 4 out or played more 5 out, he could hang out more in the corner and stuff like that. Like on Golden State, Matisse Thybulle probably has a greater value than he does in Philadelphia.
Right.
So that was just a team off the top of my head that I thought he could work well at, So I think he will continue to be discussed in trade talk. I don't know where the Sixers really think about him in terms of his extension, but the fact that he was being, looked around so much, I don't necessarily know if they're going to want to give him the money that I think he's going to want to ask for.
Right.
But maybe they would, because it also, to be a poison pill deal, it would allow him, to count for greater salary on the books. Maybe go help match Eric Gordon's salary, let's say. So I could see that happening. I don't really know how it's going to the contract talks are going to unfold. I think it's a little too early to predict exactly what will happen.
Yeah. No, it's definitely tough when you look at a young player who is limited entering contract negotiations. I mean, matching what the player wants versus what the team wants to pay is obviously difficult. Jake, I swear this is our last question. Justin just jogged my memory with this, but you wrote a little while ago about the Dallas Mavericks and the Portland Trailblazers, potentially being interested in Thybulle. All I'm going to ask you, have you heard any, because, they've signed Gary, the Blazers have anyway, Gary Payton the second thereafter. Have you heard anything to suggest that one or both of those teams is out on Thybulle?
No. I definitely think those conversations will be able to be revisited. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's definitely interesting there. And Jake, really just thank you so much. I mean, if
For
I could just
sure.
say, again, everyone, if you don't have it, Built to Lose, right? Fantastic book.
Wow.
It's
I got
awesome.
to take a picture of this. That's awesome.
It's awesome. Read it. Just read it again, just because it's that good. Okay. I do just want to give a quick shout out to those who did win the giveaway. So we have Sean, Evan, Vinicius. We're gonna have a post tagging all you guys, letting you know and how to go about claiming the book and everything like that. But congrats to our winners, and Jake, thank you so much for hopping on. We really appreciate it. It was
Thank you so much.
and awesome. So thank you.
Thanks for the hospitality. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. Well,
Take care, guys.
thank you so much, Jake. We'll probably talk to you later.
Thanks, Jake. Have a good one.
All right. Well, that's Jake Fischer, and just so much interesting stuff right there. The mind of an NBA newsbreaker is fascinating. And I don't think there's anyone like Jake either.
I know.
You know?
And it seems like, again, you just talk about relationship building, right? That's what I picked up. Was just like relationship building and saying and doing the right thing so you keep those relationships.
Yes.
And you know, you could just see right there, even just like having a conversation with us, like just building rapport. And when you have somebody like that, he's only going to get, I mean, we talked about his meteoric rise, but he's only going to get bigger, right? Because he's thinking about that type of stuff. And that's, you know, that was good.
Well, it's really interesting. Like, listen, I'm not trying to go on some like anti-corporate rant or anything like that, right? But like you just hear like, you know, people like stepping over other people, you know, crushing whatever they have to get to the top. And Jake is just so much not that person. Like, not to like overtly kiss his ass, but like he's just a legitimately good guy, you know. So it's it is a welcome change of pace, breath of fresh air. Not to say that like everybody in this industry is like the opposite of Jake, you know. We've definitely met some other good, you know, whether they're generalized reporters, more localized, whatever the case, but definitely just good guy, down to earth. Can't say enough good things about him, but definitely, again, go check out his book, Built to Lose. It's my favorite basketball book that I've read.
Definitely really good read. And like I said, like we've been telling you, you got to get it. You're gonna read stories, and you're gonna be like, well, this is where I was during this time, and now this makes sense now.
And then there's one thing that like this, you're gonna read. So, listen, if you're a Sixers fan and you're reading this book, I'm not gonna lie to you. There are gonna be parts where you're frustrated, just because with revisionist history, you know, hindsight and all that, you know, you're looking back, and you're like, no, don't do it. But when you know how the story ends, and then you read stuff about, I'll let you read the book and figure it out for yourselves. But that was Jake Fischer. Definitely excited to have him on again. It was awesome. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about James Harden's recent signing and, you know, potentially some plans for a future James Harden related podcast. So we'll let you know about that in just a bit. Today's episode of the Baseline Scoop is brought to you by La Terrain Watches. Shop affordable luxury watches with La Terrain and enjoy fast and free shipping every day. Use promo code BLS10 for 10% off the Subnautica back in stock, and you will also get a free Tropic Band included at no extra charge. Welcome back to the Baseline Scoop. Again, I'm your host, Zach Ciavolella, still with Justin, as always. Just again, Jake, fantastic. Can't say enough nice things about him.
Thank you, Jake.
But we're going to stop talking about Jake for a little bit because we got a lot to talk about with James Harden, right?
Yes.
So we have not, discussed anything about Harden since he re-signed with the Sixers. So obviously, you know, for those who don't know, Adrian Wojnarowski first released that Harden had agreed to a deal with the Sixers. It is a 2-year deal, $68.6 million, player option on the second year. So it's a lot of information that we already knew. It's just that it's now done in the books.
Right, official.
Shams Charania said it was a $15 million discount. The time is nothing to me anymore. So I don't know if that was a week or a month. I can't tell you. But he said that at some point. I know that. And
Yes.
so it was actually like 14.4. So it's like, 15, same thing.
Yeah.
So that, took a big discount there. Second year player option, of course. Big discussion going on in Philadelphia. Did he do the Sixers a favor? Which on the surface, he could have taken 47.4. Again, he took a $14.4 million discount. So you think, he did the Sixers a favor. And then there's this other section of Philadelphia, be it, sports radio, be it those online, some writers feel this way as well. But I want to get your opinion on Justin. But the other side of the argument is, well, I'm talking to Justin. James Harden, there's your comparison to James Harden. Enjoy that. James Harden didn't really do the Sixers a favor. He did himself a favor because not only did he get the second year on a contract potentially, again, it's a player option, gives him that flexibility. Who knows what other outside Rubenesque sources are contributing to this in any way, shape, or form. So a lot of people are trying not to give Harden, any kind of credit for this.
Right.
What side of the debate do you land on, Justin?
I mean, I land on the side that it definitely does get credit. All right, so it's kind of like a two-pronged attack, or more so, just like he definitely did the Sixers a favor because if he opted into the $47 million, no PJ Tucker, no Daniel House, no even flexibility to even think about any other moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like at all, right? That's number one. So if he hadn't taken that pay cut, quote unquote pay cut, then those guys wouldn't be here. And on top of that, those are the type of guys that the Sixers needed, flat out, right? So the Sixers were able to flip the whole roster around, really, to a better fitting team and kind of get some more of that two-way defense toughness that the team needed. Yeah, you could talk about PJ's contract. You could talk about whether Daniel House deserved the biannual exception, but those are the type of players we needed. Those are the type of players that Harden felt comfortable with. He definitely deserves some credit for doing that because a lot of players, and i.e. Russell Westbrook, right? Just talk about a guy who opted in. Now, his situation is different because I don't know where Russell would have went or if he would have necessarily, if the Lakers would even re-sign him, right? Or where he would have gone. Like, I don't know. But specifically, like some of those later players in their years where they're on teams that used to be contenders or want to be contenders, and they don't do themselves a favor. Carmelo Anthony, like he's another guy, right? So you look at those type of players where they're good enough players, but they're kind of going in the twilight of their prime, and they need more help. So by him taking just a cut to get some other pieces in there, it makes the Sixers deeper. And definitely, I think he deserves credit. Now, the second part is he's also betting on himself, where he's saying that, okay, I recognize me. I recognize that even though I averaged 22, 10, and 8, I didn't play, quote unquote, as well as I have in the past. So I got to live with that. Now, he's not saying to himself that I'm not worth the $47 million. He's saying that I'm giving myself a better chance to win now or the next 2 or 3 years. And he's also saying to himself that if I get back to the player that I think I can be, the player that the Sixers thinks he can be or want him to be, the player who Daryl Morey traded for, in theory, I'm going to opt out, and then I'm going to get my $220 million because we went to the conference finals, or we went to the NBA finals, or I averaged a triple-double, or I'm second team All-NBA. Like, these are the things in his head where he has that chip on his shoulder, and he's betting on himself. So, yeah, he took a discount this year. Credit for that. I'm happy he did it. But also, he's betting on himself. And I think that when you have that type of motivation, and normally guys play better during a contract year. And, I think he has some motivation where eventually he'll get that money back as far as NBA money. Now, talk about your, fanatics, conspiracies. But yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, they're first of all, I'm in the same camp, right? So, and I think Harden did the Sixers a favor. I think it's also fair to say that Harden also did himself a favor, not for anything about excess donors or not even the future flexibility, anything like that, because um, honestly, there's at least an 80% chance that he opts out. Like that, the chances of him opting into that deal next year, or and I say 80, that's me trying to be generous. Like really in my mind, it's like there's like a 2% chance he takes the like
Exactly.
really like the worst case scenario would have to happen for him to take that option, right?
Yes.
There is, and you have to consider the source, right? There are some people who have a voice in Philadelphia who are saying things like Harden deserves no credit. They think that he's on a steep decline, and hey, listen, do I think that we're ever going to see prime Houston Harden again? Like, no, that's not his game, and yeah, he's older now, so sure, you're not going to get that James Harden, but
Right.
that. I've heard people say things like Bradley Beal's a better player than James Harden now, which I don't think Bradley Beal's a better player than James Harden last season, let alone now because, and I just recently wrote on this, but whether you like to admit it or not, whether you like to call it a cop-out or not, James Harden has been dealing with an injured hamstring, right? Of course, towards the end of the season, the Sixers said they're not worried about it. Well, maybe you're not worried about it to the point that it's not going to get any worse, that it's like actually healed. But there's so much more that goes into that than people realize. So he had I'm going to summarize this super quick as I can. He had a grade 2 hamstring strain. What is that? It's a partial tear of your hamstring. What's your hamstring? 3 muscles, right? Grouped together. That's your hamstring. Grade 2 is a partial tear of at least one of those muscles. We don't know how many of those muscles he had a partial tear of. Chris Paul, and I know people hate when you bring up Chris Paul as it relates to James Harden, also dealt with a grade 2 hamstring strain, when he was with the Houston Rockets, and it really limited him. It like severely limited him.
He was always out.
People thought he was cooked. People thought he was done. He goes to Oklahoma City in a trade for Russell Westbrook, CP3, and I think it was 2 firsts for Russ. And,
yep.
What differed for Chris Paul over James Harden in that situation is that Chris Paul went to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were just coming off of having Russell Westbrook, obviously, Paul George, Kevin Durant was already gone, but after the Paul George trade, it became very clear that the team was rebuilding.
Yep.
Right, so there was not the pressure for Chris Paul to perform, to lead that team to the playoffs and beyond. Obviously, he did eventually play a large role in them making it to the playoffs, but something a lot of people forget, it was a struggle for Paul at first. He did not look good at all when he first debuted with the Thunder. For the first, I think it was since the season started all the way through January, February, possibly even March, his point per game increased, right? For it was a ridiculous amount of time, however long it was. Got better every single month with his efficiency regaining shape and everything too. So he had that ramp up period, so he had time with low expectations. You had the ramp up period to really get back into basketball playing shape. James Harden didn't have that luxury. James Harden was in Brooklyn trying to compete for a championship, and Kyrie Irving was not playing. So yes, he had that first offseason there where you kind of do some recovery, but then he's like thrown right into the lion's den with Brooklyn there. And I think that really hampered his ability to not just recover from the injury properly, but also get into proper basketball shape because he couldn't train the way that he's used to training, We had already heard that he did not fly out. I think California is usually where he trains in the offseason. He did not go out during that offseason. He was focused on recuperating. He didn't get a chance to actually get back into his NBA body. So you then play on a whole season like that, you're not going to play up to par, up to your normal standard, you know? So I think that having a secondary, second off season, they're going to, I think, bring him along a little slowly, kind of save him for the playoffs, almost like they're going to do for Joel Embiid and even PJ Tucker as well. But I have reason to believe that James Harden will be better than he was last year, and I think by a decent margin. I think the efficiency is going to come back. To a degree. Maybe he won't be not going to be confused with Steph Curry out there, but he's not going to be as frustrating as he was last season. I think that he is going to reassert himself as even if not a superstar, a high-end star.
And when you look all right, let's talk about the facts. He's third all time in threes made. Right, that's not for no reason. And then a lot of your shot has to do with your base, and if your hamstring is bad, and if it's really bad, it's going to affect your base, your lift, your follow through, everything. So these are the things that he's working on now, and getting healthy. You should see a change in the shot. He even talked about how I remember he talked about he was struggling from three, then he had a couple good games. He was talking about his base wasn't as good, and that caused his follow through not to be as good. So he was like, he has to follow through. Yeah. So those are the little things when you're hurt, you always overcompensate or do a couple things to lack, you kind of lack a few things, and it throws everything off whack. So for example, just might be too much, but for example, if you have an injury on your left hamstring, you favor more on your right. Correct. So then people forget his first couple of weeks playing here, when he ramped back up, he was wearing a right calf sleeve because he probably pulled his calf because he was trying not to re-injure or make the situation worse or be in more pain. So he favored the right more. So it's just those type of things where he's really trying to get his body back together.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because your muscle develops a memory that's different than what you're used to just because of how you're overcompensating in that injured period. So you have to readjust to normalcy too. And I'm glad that you mentioned his base because I think it affected more than just the jump shot because it becomes such a mental thing for anyone, but especially for him. Clearly, I think that's what led to a lot of there were so many turnovers when he was driving into the paint. Listen, can all of that be attributed to the injury? No, obviously not. I think you contribute some of it to it. I mean, he just clearly wasn't as secure, and he didn't have the burst, obviously, that he's used to. So that affects his finishing. That affects his security. So if he is normal-ish, if he's healthy, I'll just say that. If he's healthy, I have no reason to believe that he's not going to be an improved finisher, an improved driver, shooter than he was last season. So I'm excited for Harden this year. I think to suggest that certain things that have been suggested are, well, if he didn't if he denied the contract, declined his option rather, and didn't re-sign with the Sixers, that's, well, who else was going to be interested was the argument. And I've heard how, well, you shouldn't give him any credit because he guaranteed himself like $21 more million and stuff like that. And it's like, well, first of all, you're not really understanding how any of this works, because you can't take salary 1 year and compare that to salary 2 years, because if he took the option, he would be signing for another contract the following year. So you have to factor in whatever
regardless.
That is.
They weren't going to do James all of
Harden.
that and let him walk.
James Harden. He could have one leg and somebody's going to sign him to a halfway decent deal just in hopes that they can reignite something in him, So to say if he took the deal and then didn't and then became a free agent next season, which again, more than likely he's declining the option. The only reason I can think that he wouldn't is that he wouldn't want to take any less money, and he can't really take more to help the Sixers. I mean, I know next year they won't be able to use their biannual exception.
Right.
They're probably not going to want to use the non-taxpayer, even if they're eligible, just from the basis of like being hard cap is not fun.
Yeah.
And they know that already. So they may be willing to do that 1 year. Maybe the next year they want to go with the taxpayer mid-level. But regardless, like he's going to try and help balance the salary cap going forward within reason, I think. But even if he just took the player option and then walked the next year, he's still leaving with more money than even if he signs for a great deal next year.
Right.
So I think it's a great move. He bets on himself. Like, obviously he's not going to play for free. Right. Like, people are acting like he's just going to play for free. They're like, oh, because he gets something that works for him in this deal. It's like, well, you shouldn't give him any credit. It's like, well, no, he did let, the Sixers off of like $14.5 million and, work with them to bring in more players, which does also help him, like bringing in PJ and Daniel, they're his guys,
Exactly.
But even still, they're guys the Sixers need. Like, Daniel House can play the Danny Green role. PJ Tucker, he's the dog. He's the PJ Tucker is literally who Joel Embiid asked for after the season.
By name.
Like, so listen, it's not just about, oh, these are James Harden guys. It's Joel Embiid's guy, PJ Tucker. Right? You see them? They're already best of friends. Him and PJ Tucker. Like, the only thing in Joel's mind who's probably missing is just Jimmy Butler, and he's just doing like the Wolverine, like just petting the picture of Jimmy Butler back of the house. But of course Harden gets stuff out of this. That doesn't mean you can't give him credit for what he did, because how often do superstars actually do this? People don't take less money. Right? People really, it's so rare that players actually take less money to players, and a significant amount of money at that, to actually play with someone.
We're not talking about a mid-level guy who might get $16 million but decided to take $7 million because he wants to play with a contender.
Yeah,
we're talking
this
about
isn't like Wayne Ellington, who was worth like $3 million, taking 2.6 to play with the Lakers. Like, this isn't that. Like, this is a guy who gave up, between $14 to $15 million, who, again, and I know people don't like to hear it because he averaged 20 and 10, like, and a near triple double. So it's like, I get that it didn't look great, and I get that it's not as simple as, hey, these were his basic stats. Like, you have to look at the efficiency. You have to do the eye test, obviously.
Yeah,
it was definitely worse than if you just go to Basketball Reference and look at him.
I agree.
But with that being said, like, to a degree, it almost doesn't even matter, because the biggest reason that there were less players involved in Harden this season, or at least just from an interest standpoint, is that the league was kind of in a cap problem overall. Like, how many teams actually had space? And even still, if Harden wanted to leave, you work out a sign and trade.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's how it works with so many teams.
Yep.
So, end of the day, just listen, suck it up. Give Harden some credit. He did a good thing. Yes, he got something out of it, but like, he's not going to work for free, right? And he's not going to break his back. Like, if Joel Embiid really wanted the Sixers to win, he'd do it for free. He'd pay the Sixers to play for that. Like, no, it's not. It's ludicrous.
Not how it works.
It's not how any of it works. So just it's a ridiculous conversation. Harden's extended. Finally, the offseason can progress. It's a good. You can say what you want about they shouldn't have traded for Harden. They should have done a deal with the Kings, something like that. Like, I mean, I don't love those past, conversations, stuff like that. But if you feel that way, you feel that way.
Right.
But to say that, first of all, bringing Harden back, which there wasn't much of an alternative, to say that bringing Harden back was a bad idea, or to be upset at Harden for doing what he did with the salary negotiation, that's absolutely insane. I just think people like to complain. I mean, we know people like to complain, and it's. I mean, Philly has a known history of it, but I think that's everywhere too. Like, I know a lot of Lakers fans who complain. A lot of people in New York love to complain. It's not a Philly thing, but city people like to complain, I feel like. So you get so all in all, like, it's just be happy. stop trying to complain about everything and let James Harden play a few games before you completely say that he's
Right,
cooked.
run him out of town.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, like let's just see what the guy looks like. We had an 82 game regular season. You're gonna have time to see. Like as much as you think you know, you do not know. Like
And he's not going to play well every game.
No. I mean, who does? Joel Embiid had a game he scored 0 points. Should we have not signed Joel Embiid to the Supermax? Well,
Right.
I mean, I'm not a big Supermax guy in general. I'm happy Joel got paid, but you get my point. Should we have not extended Joel? Like, no, of course we should have extended Joel.
Right.
So it's a ridiculous conversation. I'm happy Harden's here. Big reason I'm happy Harden's here. Joel is happy that Harden is here, right?
Yep.
And that's a huge focus too, is making Joel happy.
Right.
He's happy PJ Tucker's here. He's happy James Harden's here. And they're one big happy family having parties that Michael Rubin's throwing every other day, it seems like. So and I don't care. Like, yeah, that's fine. Like, we have the best chemistry the Sixers have had in the entire process era. They're going down to, I think it's Charleston, South Carolina.
For training camp.
Like, that it's like they say they're going to focus up. There's a little bit of a vacation aspect there too, because Doc loves him some golf. But
yes,
like it's a good opportunity for the team. I do really believe in that. To really, I don't think they're going to focus in on basketball, like lock themselves in a gym or anything like that. Like that's ridiculous. But just spending time together, like it's so clear by how much time this team is spending together now, how big of an issue Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons was.
Mm-hmm.
So to see them now spending all this time together, doing all these things, having a great time together, like how can you not, like, obviously you need to see them like prove it on the court, but that doesn't mean this isn't a good thing.
Yeah, like I feel like partially in the past with like, well, I guess I can't call him 25 anymore because Daniel House has 25, but
yeah,
25. People say, you see more pictures of James Harden and Joel Embiid out than you see with him and Ben. But I'm like, yes, which is great. But the counteract is Embiid has matured more and realized that he needed to be a different type of leader. Yeah. So that means building relationships with your other key players and leaders so you can gather the troops together. Yeah. And it'd be just a common front. It shouldn't be you follow James, you follow Joel, and we just mean this is the common front. We're leaders together, and this is how we're gonna run the ship for the year. And you have people you sprinkle in there, Tobias and his type of leadership that he brings. He brings something to the team, as well as like you hear stories about Niang, how he's the comedic relief. Like those are the things. Tyrese is the guy who brings the energy when everybody doesn't have any energy. Yeah. Like you sprinkle all together, but you build that with the chemistry, and people know their roles, and that's why it's important that they're out doing what they're doing, and it's important that they're going to Charleston together, for an unconventional training camp.
I do also think that James Harden and Joel are just much more compatible personalities, though. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. Like there has been a growth in Joel as a leader in that front, and I think Harden's been, everyone thought Harden was going to be a bad influence on everybody because, you talk about things like bubble rumors and stuff like that. And, when in actuality, like he's really been a good leader so far. He's been great for Tyrese Maxey. Yep. I think he's taught Joel a few things about leadership. You see Harden all the time, like coaching guys on the floor. And you start to see Joel do the same thing. So I think that a lot of credit goes to Joel. I think a lot of credit goes to James Harden. And now they're doing these things that you have to do, to really have great chemistry as a team. And I think it's going to be a fun season. This team is much better, they're deeper. They still have a great starting five. Who do you think's in the starting five? Who's the fifth starter?
Oh, I think it's Tucker.
Really? Okay. So this is where we differ. So everybody says Tucker, and here's my reason against it, right? Because here's the thing. First of all, starters don't matter. I'm just going to flat out say it. Because it's not starters, it's closers. Closers are who really matter, right? Now, if you're talking about closers, then I could see PJ Tucker being a closer. But my two problems with saying that he's going to start games in the regular season is that, one, he's here for the playoffs, right? So I think they're going to be really, sparing with his minutes during the season. The other thing that I have to say there is that you're looking at a lot of time of Tobias at the 3, because you're not going to be looking at Tucker at the 3 in those situations.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a lot of time at Tobias at the 3. He did improve as a defender last season. I still think it's a little problematic. So I wouldn't be surprised, mostly because they're going to be saving Tucker, if you see probably Matisse Thybulle, barring a trade. Obviously, we talked to Jake. Obviously, Thybulle's still on the table. But if he's still with the Sixers, which again Jake said is definitely a possibility, I definitely see a world where he starts because, like Jake said, like they obviously do value him. Otherwise, he would have already been traded. So
Right.
It's just a matter of who fits what lineup. How does everything break up? Because again, they start the game, but the closing lineup's completely different. And then Doc likes to stagger Embiid and Harden a little bit as well. And Matisse Thybulle is really good in Harden non-Embiid minutes. So you could see a scenario where Thybulle starts, perhaps they take Joel out early, and then they keep Matisse with Harden, and then the closing lineup, that's when Tucker comes in with the rest of the starters.
Right.
So my 2 bones about that, but we can have a whole nother discussion about that.
Yeah,
but,
rotation.
Again,
rotation
the point, again, at the end of the day, the conversation really, and I know I said, who's a starter. What matters is who's closing.
Yep.
And come playoff time, who's closing? That's PJ Tucker. That much.
I agree.
That's for certain. So
I agree.
The other thing that James Harden, has been really focused on, other than the new season and everything like that, he's dropping wine, right? Which is you hear about superstars and you hear about wine in the NBA. And it's not where you think that this story would be going, but he's dropping his own wine brand. There are what is it? 4 types? Is it 2 reds and 2 whites?
Yeah, I believe it's 4 different wines.
Yeah, so it's dropping 4 different types of wine. They're going to be coming in September, right? So this is like, I think this is awesome, right? What are your opinions on it? Because I feel like this is something that like you get, sponsorships with companies and stuff like that. But I like seeing NBA stars develop something.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Like it's on the same lines of like LeBron and the Lobos thing.
Yeah,
like just more so create your own. Getting in a market where your fans will purchase it, especially if it's good, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Your fans will purchase it, and then you just doing your different business ventures. So I like it. It gives it a chance, something different. I never thought that Harden would be a wine guy, and that he would be dropping wine. But I'm interested to see how it tastes.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a wine tasting for it. Taste test them out for ourselves and see, get a couple guests on for that. But, it's just, there's nothing wrong with a guy, enjoying and living life. Oh, it looks like it's actually 2 types. So there's a Cab Sauv, and California Cab Sauv, California Red Blend. I don't know about your personal wine tastes, and this is going to be looked down by true wine connoisseurs, which I am not one of, though I enjoy it every now and again. I'm a red blend kind of guy, so I can get behind that. That nice kind of balance, like a little touch of sweet.
Yeah,
that's my wheelhouse. So
I'm the same way.
Very good, awesome. So we're gonna have a good time doing that wine tasting. But until then, we're gonna see what happens with the Sixers between now and the start of the regular season. There is going to be kind of an awkward pause, I think, where everyone's just kind of waiting for stuff to happen. Harden signs. Michael Foster Jr. is on an Exhibit 10. He might be converted to a 2-way. Sean Bernard and I talked about 2-way contracts on the last episode. But we're kind of now in that period. With the Sixers, it seems like there's a story every 5 minutes. And now we've fleshed out every story about free agency, the draft, the roster's full. We've talked about Summer League, the stadium. We talked about that with Jake earlier. It is what it is. It's probably not much ado about nothing right now. But and like Jake said, like so much of it's like speculative. There's no there's no guarantee in revitalization of the area. You know, you could just as easily force people out of neighborhoods, which is something that we don't want either. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen over these next few weeks, but I guarantee there's going to be at least a handful of Michael Rubin parties between now and then. So maybe we have that to look forward to. But thank you so much for listening to the show today and joining us for our special guest, Jake. It was awesome to have him on again. Really just thank you so much for listening to that, sticking around for the James Harden stuff. Congrats again to our winners of the book contest, the giveaway contest. So thank you again for entering and for watching and supporting us. So be sure to if you're listening on Spotify, check us out on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, check us out on Spotify, you know, and like and leave a review if possible. We love it. So just thank you again. And Justin, any closing thoughts before we end today?
No, just everything you said about, you know, thanks Jake for coming on, and just to let you know, we might think it's a quiet time, but as soon as we think it's quiet time, something happens. So
right, I'm gonna flesh this out real quick. So my father, okay, my Italian American father, we've always believed in this concept called two concepts, the two sides of the same coin. There's the kiss of death and there's the reverse kiss of death, right? So basically how it works, you can give something the kiss of death. I feel like most people understand what that is. You know, you say something great about something, and then it hits the fan, whatever. Yeah. And there's the reverse kiss of death, right? Where, you know, you say something, you know, maybe not so much in support of the thing, in the hopes that it's reverse psychology is basically what it breaks down to, you know. So I'm hoping, because again, you know, Daryl Morey's never done.
Never.
He's never not working, you know. So we'll keep an eye out for what moves Morey has planned. Obviously, there could still be a trade between now and the start of the season. Furkan, Matisse, Tobias Harris. I feel like anybody but Joel Embiid and James Harden, and of course PJ Tucker would be potentially on the table. So
Tyrese Maxey as well, not on the table.
I mean, I hope so, you know, but
unless it's Kevin Durant, but
we don't know how this Kevin Durant and the Donovan Mitchell thing is going to shake out, you know. So so we will see. But thanks again for listening. That's been our show for today. I'm Zach Chavalella here with my co-host Justin Crosby at Will Work for Sneaks on Twitter. Follow my man. Definitely check out his stuff. Check out his writing on PhillySportsNetwork.com. Folks, you have yourself a great night.
Peace.